Okay, so this is Ringwalk Media. We've got something special today. We're up in York and we're with the Pocklington Rocket. Harry Matthews, really, really good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, John. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to talk a bit about my career and talk about myself and what my future plans are.
Well, listen, we've seen you around an awful lot over the last few years. You've had a really long career, 96 fights, mate. That's a lot of fights.
Yeah, I suppose I've always had a bit of a screw loose, do you know that? So, but yeah, when I retired a while ago, I think I retired at 70 odd fights, and I didn't think I was going to get to 100 fights. I was pretty much done. But after a bit of a recharge, I decided to come back, started enjoying it again, and here we are, 4 fights away from 100 fights. So yeah,
it's a massive achievement, that, mate. Well, let's go through your career, because some people may not know you. Some people may have seen you, but just not known who you are. Well, I'm interested because you've had a really, really good career going forward. You started out in 2008, and you won your first 11 fights out of 13, and then you went and fought a Mr. Chris Eubank Jr, didn't you?
I did. When I got that first, I got my first 9 professional wins under my belt. Everything was off to a blinding start. I boxed on a show in Belfast against a kid called Kieran Healy. I hit him with everything. I could split both his eyes open. I thought, there's no way I've not lost this. Anyway, it turns out I did lose a fight. And I think from there on, I maybe just, I had a bit, sort of doubted myself a little bit. But then I went and watched Chris Eubank Jr. in his second fight. It was on the undercard to James DeGale. I remember watching him thinking, I can take him. Do you know what I mean? And then, lo and behold, I was, working on a bloody building site one day, and I was like, Chris Eubank Jr. needs an opponent in 3 weeks. Would you be up for fighting him? I was just like, yeah, absolutely. I was already fit. And then obviously I heard him in the interview saying that he reckons he was going to stop me in 3 rounds. And I just thought, you know what it is? I might not beat him on points, but I will be there at the end of the fight, and I will be there to tell him that he didn't stop me. And that's exactly what I did. And no matter what happens in my career, I'm always able to sort of look back on that fight and think, do you know what? I give a good account of myself that night, and I'm sure he remembers it as well. And you know what? If there's any fight that anyone remembers, it's always that one. It was on Channel 5. All the people in my hometown watched it, and that's always a memory that I'll cherish. So yeah.
So from what you can remember in the early days, because he was only on his 3rd or 4th fight, I think. It was 2012. Just how good was he?
Well, Chris, on that night, you hit like a little bitch, mate, to be honest. But no, he's definitely improved a lot. I boxed the guy, that he fought not long after as well, Nick Blackwell, who unfortunately suffered a really bad injury. A lot of time for Nick, wish him well. But yeah, I boxed both of them. And to be honest with you, on that, when I fought Nick Blackwell, he was the stronger of the two, to be honest. He was relentless, he was a good fighter. I lasted the distance with him as well. So, I never expected things to end the way they did, kind of thing. But yeah, I would say Chris Eubank Jr. at the time was a work in progress, but he has come on leaps and bounds, kind of thing. So, good luck to you, Chris.
Now listen, you've fought, like I say, 96 fights, and it was kind of at that point after the Eubank fight where your career seemed to just turn into what they call a journeyman. I don't know if that was particularly straight away, but it was fairly quickly. How do you make that kind of decision to not go in as a mainstream boxer and become a journeyman?
Do you know what? I never classed myself as a journeyman up until about 50 odd fights in, because I was always trying to win that Central Area title, and I always thought if I win the Central Area title, I will, look to try and become an English and a British champion. I always thought to myself, no matter what happens, I'm going to fight on the road, because it meant I didn't have to sell tickets. I could just train, turn up, fight, and what will be will be. I'd know I was always getting paid. Whereas when I was selling tickets, I was having to cover my opponent's purse, my promoter's purse kind of thing before I was getting anything. So if my opponent was costing me £2 for 6 rounds, and my promoter wanted £1,000 in the pot, if I wanted £2, you work it out, I was having to sell 5.5, 6 grand worth of tickets, and it's a lot of relying on a lot of Johns from the pub to tell you that they're going to sell 10 tickets and then let you down last minute, and then if they let you down, it's not coming out of anyone else's purse other than yours. So obviously, from a financial point of view, it made more sense to fight on the road, because I always thought if I hit him and I catch him right, I've always got that chance, and I've always kept myself in shape, and I've always boxed because I enjoy it, kind of thing. And I suppose I maybe did kind of give up, thinking that I wouldn't be able to be a champion after being on the back end of a few bad decisions for the Central Area title. I beat Ben Davies for the Central Area title eliminator, and then to me, I thought, right, I'm going to fight the champion, who it was at the time. I can't remember if it might have been called James Brown. But he retired after making me wait for a year. So then they said, okay, you and Ben box again. And then Ben retired halfway through camp, which in my eyes should have made me the champion. But then I got made to wait to fight again for 6 months, where I was fighting Daryl Sharp on the way to the ring. The fight gets cancelled because someone had been stabbed in the audience. So then I had to wait again. And I boxed Christian Kinciona, who I believe that I beat by at least 2 rounds on that night. And a lot of other people did as well. And obviously he got the decision. So, yeah, I just decided that fighting on the road was probably the best point of view. And then obviously, I now have other aspirations of making it in the acting world.
Well, we'll get to the acting in a minute, but let's stick with the boxing, because a lot of people will be really interested in this, because I did a little bit of homework, and you have fought some serious boxers. You've fought Dempsey Fury, Chris Eubank Jr., Anthony Fitzgerald, Marcus Morrison, Jack Cullen, Paddy McCrory, Jack Flatley, Mickey Ellison, Kieran Conway, Anthony Pythian, and Lerone Richards. Those are all really, really good boxers. One that stands out there is Paddy McCrory. Tell us about that fight, because I believe that fight was a tough fight. Maybe you shouldn't have taken that fight.
Paddy McCrory, yeah, do you know what? I boxed him in Belfast. It was a great fight. Very close fight again. He beat me by 1 round on the scorecards. I believe it should have been a draw. Another fight where I gave a good account of myself, and I showed that when I wanted to, I could pull it out of the bag. But again, that's another fight that they, chose not to post the video afterwards. I understand Paddy McCrory is doing really well now, and I'm happy for his success. But yeah, just sometimes luck hasn't always been on my side. But since fighting on the road, I've earned a ton more of, load more respect from other fighters and the boxing community. And I'm just, like I say, I'm enjoying it for what it is now.
The reason I say you shouldn't have taken that fight was I think you'd had a really, really tough fight probably 2 or 3 weeks prior to that, and going into a fight with a fighter as good as Paddy, that was a pretty tough order. That's the reason I asked that question.
Yeah, I think I boxed the Welsh kid Cody Davies. That's who I boxed, and Cody Davies he was like Calzaghe, to be honest. You know what I mean? His hands were coming from all over the place, but he wasn't a concussive puncher. He was just really accurate. And to be honest with you, it was a fight where I learned quite a lot. I was on the seat of my arse in the last round, but yeah, it was a great learning fight, that one for me. And yeah, maybe I shouldn't have taken the fight after, but I recovered quite quickly after the Cody Davies fight, and I went out there and I just thought, well, I'm just going to use my experience and get through it better. And obviously, compared to the Cody Davies fight, that fight wasn't tough at all on that night.
So a lot of people will sort of stigmatise a journeyman as somebody that basically goes into a ring and takes a fall or does what they're told. I don't think you've been that kind of journeyman, have you? I think you've gone in there and really pushed all your opponents, especially more recently since you've come back. The sort of the lads who are making their debuts or in the first, second fights, you've really pushed those lads, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as like a tough gatekeeper, and I always think to myself, whoever I fight, they're going to have to work for the money. They're going to have to work for the win. And ultimately I want to keep my respect as much as possible. And becoming one of the top road warriors out there is a good kind of title to have these days. You've got a lot of other top kind of road warriors out there. Pooch Hughes just retired. Good luck to what he's doing now. I think he's refereeing now, isn't he?
Yeah, he's refereeing. I see him ringside with a bow tie on, I think, which was not like him because he's crazy.
Yeah. No, he's a great character, and it's good that he can still be involved in the sport. I would say probably one of the best journeymen out there as well is Robbie Chapman, and I have to say the best journeyman out there has got to be Daryl Sharp. Yeah. Daryl Sharp takes risks like no other. I think I've seen him boxing at bloody heavyweight. Do you know what I mean?
He boxed against. He was on a Kieran Farrell show, I think, about a year ago, and yeah, he boxed at I think light heavy.
Yeah, but I mean, people think, light heavyweight's, quite a heavyweight. I mean, I'm light heavyweight now. I fight at 13 stone. It's not a lot really. It's quite easy to get up to light heavyweight kind of thing, and then obviously after that you've got cruiserweight, which is like kind of 14. So, I reckon there should be kind of some sort of new weight category, for sort of, people sort of between 13 and 13 and a half, I'd say.
Well, I thought they've brought out Bridger weight, haven't they? So I think that's the kind of the new weight. I think Alan Babbage sits at that sort of weight.
Right. Yeah, Alan Babbage, I've seen him. He's another talent kind of thing. Who did he box recently?
He was over in Poland, fought a Polish boxer. He actually unfortunately lost. He was fighting for a title as well, so he was knocked out in the first round. But he's a crazy guy, and he's a good boxer. Obviously, he's working with Eddie Hearn on Matchroom, so he's had different opportunities. But yeah, he's not been around recently. I think he's trying to get himself back into the gym and get himself fit. But so listen, journeyman. You're in the ring. Not all boxers are respectful, right? And have you ever got into the ring with someone that's really giving you grief and thought, right, you're proper getting it now?
Do you know what? I'd say the only fighter that ever tried to kind of try and intimidate me a little bit would be Chris Eubank Jr. And me being as stubborn as I am, I was just thinking, nah, mate, I'm not taking that. As long as I'm there at the end, then I'm happy. You ain't gonna stop me. And a lot of fighters out there, they know that they're gonna get what they bargain for. If they come looking for a fight with me, I'm gonna fight fire with fire. I would say one that maybe tried to intimidate me a little bit, but it was more kind of playful. Would be Lerone Richards. He was like Apollo Creed. You know what I mean? When I took the fight quite short notice, kind of thing. And they were calling out, former British champion, former European, current IBO world champion, and he was just like that, like Apollo Creed kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah, not bad, yeah, well done, kind of thing. And that was it. And then I just went out there and I just thought, you know what it is, I'm just gonna box you, and for every round I'm in here, I'm happy to be here, kind of thing. And fair play to him. He caught me with a good body shot. He caught me with a shot on the temple. My coach kind of threw the towel in. He just won my night, and also he was a tricky southpaw. And anyone that knows southpaws knows that when you box someone like Lerone Richards with arms like his and angles like his and skills like his, and obviously he's been doing his strength and conditioning with that Wilson Boxing Science guy, and I have to say his powers come on leaps and bounds. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was boxing for a world title at some point, and I hope to see him make it all the way because he's a class act. He is.
I was actually at that fight. I saw that fight, and I agree completely with you. He's a class act, and going into the ring with someone like yourself to learn those skills that are needed when someone puts it on them is vital in a boxer's sort of development. So you're helping boxers like that to develop into world title champions, aren't you?
Of course, yeah. I mean, if it weren't for us road warriors, there'd be no shows, would they? We are what essentially help boxers to get higher up the ladder, and there's different levels of journeyman, isn't there? I like to think I'm that journeyman that you would probably fight if you was going to be trying to knock on the door of Central Area and English titles, kind of thing.
Well, you've fought for the English title, haven't you?
I have, mate. Yeah, and that was against Nick Blackwell. When I took that fight, I had what was his name? Tommy Gilmore, Scottish guy, goes, Harry, I got you a fight
the guy's not had any amateur experience. He's had a few kickboxing fights in white collar. You'll be all right. And then, I got in there kind of thing, and I realised that this kid, he'd had 20 white collar fights, but he'd had, what had he had? No, he might have had more. I think he'd won.
I think he'd done 30.
He'd done 30, but I think he'd knocked out about 28 or something, hadn't he, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? That's why they were saying he was special, and he was good. I mean, Nick Blackhall, he was sparring guys like Carl Froch, wasn't he, and stuff like that. He was going down to the England camp. I mean, unfortunately, there's only twice I've been down the England camp, and that's when I boxed for St Paul's when I was an amateur. And the two people that I actually sparred, one was George Groves, who hit me with a body shot, and I was like, wow, get out. And then Anthony Ogogo, and Billy Joe Saunders, I sparred him as well. So I sparred them kids as amateurs kind of thing. So that was kind of like, that was a really good experience that I had sort of quite early on. If I'm honest, I turned pro at 20 because I got a bit frustrated with the computer scoring. But part of me is like, well, I think if I'd have stayed amateur for maybe a couple of years and maybe could have got to the finals, maybe won a national title kind of thing, and then maybe my career might have been a bit different. I started off on the ticket side of things with without really having a sponsor kind of thing. I had sponsors sort of here and there kind of thing, but yeah, I made a few sort of bad decisions in my life with leading up to me becoming a journeyman. But I've kind of used them experiences to my advantage kind of thing. And I think every experience you learn from, and all the good and bad experiences I've had, I kind of take that into my acting kind of thing. So
We're going to talk about your acting now, because I'm not sure that everyone's aware, but you are quite a good actor and also a writer as well. And just recently you've released a short film, I think it's about 15 minutes long, called Boxer. You've got Nigel Travis in it. Of all people in boxing you could have picked, you've got Nigel. Just tell us about Boxer, because it's won some awards. It's done very well.
yeah, Boxer. It was kind of based on a little bit of a wrong turn that I took in my life. I was involved with some, not good people, doing a few bits and bats here and there. Got caught, kind of thing, and it's kind of like an experience that I kind of decided, I'm gonna use this experience, and I'm gonna write a bit of a story. It was like I say, I never went to prison or anything, but it was a dramatised story about a boxer taking a wrong turn and then ultimately trying to find his redemption through boxing. And I got $5,000 given to me by someone, an old sponsor of mine called Graham Barker, for Jorvik Refrigeration. I'll never forget it, Graham. So if you're watching, I really appreciate it. You're the man that enabled me to make this film. And I thought to myself, I'm going to get in touch with Nigel Travis to play my trainer, who was based on a real character, Sean Asquith, who trained me from the very beginning. He's the reason why I put the gloves on. And he's the one that, took me around all the pro gyms and got me into the amateur boxing. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have boxed. So he was based on that kind of character who was like a mentor to me. And I thought, who better than Nigel Travis to play, him? So I rang him up and I just said, look, can you play this character? Here's the script. I offered him, a nice sort of payment for it kind of thing. And he did it, do you know what I mean? And he did it in a good fashion. And me and him, we got on really well. And it was, like I say, he was only shooting for like 1.5, 2 days, but what we did shoot was brilliant. And obviously, COVID happened and I was writing the feature version of it, and I'd not really done enough with the short film. So I started recently submitting it to a lot of film festivals. It won the Critics' Choice, it won the Nest Films category, it won the multi-dimension independent film festival. It won that. There was one called 4 Theatre, and like I said, a couple of them that have won Best Actor, and it's won Best Short Film. So obviously that again has inspired me to pick up the feature version that was raw. It was called City Limits. It had a few flaws in it kind of thing, but it was quite good for a first draft. I've got in touch with a guy called Michael J. Farrell, and we're going to do the rewrite with that, and hopefully we're going to make it much bigger. Unfortunately, sometimes these things take time. So obviously that was kind of like my starting point. And there was a guy called Jack Brewer, who I've done a few films with, Some Kind of Love, which has won awards. Low Rollers, that's also won awards. And obviously, I presented the opportunity for him to direct Boxer, which he was happy to direct. And obviously we got it shot in about 4 days, and the last day of filming was before COVID lockdown #1. So that was when it all kind of finished, kind of thing. So obviously, COVID is pretty much done now, but since I didn't really have much chance to kind of distribute it, kind of thing. So obviously I've wanted to pick that project back up, kind of thing. So the only thing we're kind of missing now is a proper investor, kind of thing. So if there is anyone out there that wants to invest in a feature film, wants to be in it, we're looking to get as bigger cast as we can, kind of thing. That would be great. Get in touch.
We're going to post a link on our bio as well in our Instagram account, so you can go onto our Instagram and you'll be able to see that as well and watch the original version, I guess. So we've been a little bit cheeky and we've been on your acting bio, and it says here you do some accents. So we'd like to test that out, if that's all right with you. So American accent. Give us a line in American.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. My American accent, it comes to life the more I kind of do it. I'm absolutely delighted to be here for this interview, and thank you, Jonathan.
Not bad. Okay, Cockney.
Well, you see, what it's all about, right, is you got to work hard. You got to do the graft. Yeah. Otherwise, nothing's going to happen. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
That's not bad at all, that. Right, so obviously Northern's an easy one for you, but Scottish.
Scottish. I've actually done a film called Low Rollers and Scottish accent. I was playing a character called Wetsuit. If you watch it on Amazon Prime, you'll be able to watch it in more depth.
You actually look Scottish when you say that.
Do I, really? Maybe I've got a bit of Scottish blood in me, a bit of ancestors, I boxed in Scotland quite a lot of times, so, of a guy called Sam Kynock, I'm sure you know him.
You're not bad, to be fair. Not bad, to be fair. And you've been in a few bits, a few adverts and stuff as well, we've seen. Just roll off a couple of the credits that you've been in. I think you mentioned one of them, which was Some Kind of Love.
Yeah, Some Kind of Love. Low Rollers, which obviously has been award-winning. I've got a film called Letter from Death, which is still in pre-production, but that's got quite a decent cast attached to it. I can't say too much right now. I've also been sent quite a big script with quite a well-known actor. Well, he's a big-time actor. I've been sent a script for that, so I'm just undergoing negotiations with that at the minute. But yeah, I've been into Bet365 adverts. You might have seen me in between the Anthony Joshua and Usyk fight. You might have seen a little boxing advert where we're going to hit each other. There was a guy called me and Nicole Campbell who did that advert actually. So yeah.
So you're quite serious with this acting, and like you say, you actually wrote the screenplay as well, which is, the way to carry on going forward and being productive with films. I guess that's where the money is it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm no expert at writing screenplays. I've just basically learned off a lot of people. I've read a lot of scripts, and I think if you've got a bit of an eye for it and you've got an interest in it, and like I say, I'm a lover of film, and I just want to, recreate stories, recreate characters, and be on film sets, and essentially, I want to have fun doing what I love, doing what I'm passionate about, and I don't fit in the 9-to-5 life. That's just not for me. I am self-employed, personal training. I've got some great clients, but that allows me to be able to be flexible with my time. So, if my agent, Red Door in Manchester, thought I'd mention you guys, Red Door in Manchester was to ring me up and say, oh, look, we've got a casting, you need to be available for tomorrow. I'm in a position to be able to do that. So it's hard to be able to hold down a proper job. So I have no choice but to make it in this industry, and that's exactly what I plan to do.
So let's go back to boxing very quickly. You've got 4 fights to go for the 100. I'm assuming that's going to hopefully happen this year. Are you going to hang the gloves up once you've hit that 100?
If you're a boxer, you know what I'm thinking, don't you? In my head, I'm like, yeah, I'll hang the gloves up, no problem. The only way I'm going to hang the gloves up in the next couple of years probably is if the right film role comes up. After fight number 100, the acting and the filming is going to take priority. Well, it kind of already does. So we'll just have to see. I just want to go out, having a good 100th fight, you know, I'm going to box 6 rounds. I'm going to sell tickets. I'm going to have a training camp for that properly. You know, and obviously after that, I'll probably make a decision. But yeah, you know, the next 4 fights, I'm training as hard as I can for, and you know, if anything, I want to give the best account of myself possible in the next 4 fights. So yeah, we'll see, won't we?
Well, we've heard that you know, there's a casting coming up for 007. Do you fancy that game?
Do you know what? It's really funny that you mentioned that, because I was actually reading today saying that, you know, it's not true what they say. You know, they're not looking at people like Idris Elba. They're not looking at Tom Hardy. They're not looking at any big names. They're actually looking at somebody who is generally unknown, who is an up and coming, and someone who's sort of, you know, between kind of in the kind of early kind of 30s kind of thing, and that role is tailor made for me. So yeah, watch your space.
We're going to get you to do your best James Bond in a minute.
My name's Matthews. Harry Matthews.
So just before we get gone, because we've been talking for quite some time now, and it's been really interesting hearing about, you know, how you've gone from, you know, being a young boxer right the way through to the present day. But you do some personal training, don't you? And we're here in your gym, and it's a really cracking place.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky to say that, you know, I've got some loyal clients, you know, probably about sort of 12 to 15, but a lot of them do kind of twice a week. A lot of my clients I've trained for kind of 4 or 5 years. So yeah, you know, it's a great job where you build, you know, great relationships with people, and you ultimately, you know, you're helping them to obtain their fitness goals. You know, you're helping with their mental health and well-being. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for about 10 years, and you know, it's one of the best jobs in the world. So yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, they can't get a much better trainer, because, you know, you've had a really good long career in boxing. You're a very personable guy. We've always found you decent and great to chat with. And I've just got this funny feeling that once you get to 100, you're going to want to get to 150. I really do.
Well, Poochie did it, didn't he? Do you know what I mean? And the thing is, you know, I don't abuse my body. I live the life, and I love boxing and for as long as I enjoy putting the gloves on, and I feel that my reflexes are there, then there's no reason why I wouldn't. But at the end of the day, you know, my aspirations are in the film world and the acting world kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll just, like I say, after my 100th fight, you know, I've had a word with my coach, and we've just said we're just going to take it 1 fight at a time, and we'll see what happens.
Well, listen, it's been a really, really good afternoon. It's been fantastic to speak to you. Harry Matthews, we wish you all the best, and thank you very much.